it is 5:30 and I'm calling this meeting to order. First, a reminder that meetings of the Select Board are meetings conducted in public. They are not meetings of the public. Nonetheless, members of the public shall be afforded reasonable opportunities to express opinions about matters conducted by the Select Board, so long as order is maintained. The rules for public comment are, at the conclusion of a Select Board discussion on an agenda item, but before any action is taken, there may be 10 minutes afforded to public comment. Comments made by the public must be addressed to the chair, to the Select Board as a whole, and not to any individual members of the Select Board or members of the public. Members of the public must be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. If a member of the public has already spoken on a topic, they shall not be recognized again until others have first been given the opportunity to comment. Excuse me. Order and decorum shall be maintained throughout the meeting. Personal, impertinent, threatening, or profane remarks will not be tolerated. For those who are participating via Zoom, please note that chat is not an appropriate avenue for public comment. All public comments must be made verbally when acknowledged by the chair. Please silence all cell phones, and a reminder to all that this meeting is being recorded and may appear on the internet. So, are there adjustments to the order of the agenda?
I have none.
Does anybody else want to move stuff up or down? Okay. Moving on to the approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve August 21st, 2024.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of August 41st, 2024. Any?
One thing, the property tax bill dates, it looks like we're missing the first one. The minutes reflect a December
Where?
or March payment, but no, it looks like the first one's not on
Let's
this.
see. You're right. So the September 29th, 27th, 29th?
27.
Okay. That should get added there. Anything else? No? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, warrants to the treasurer.
Make a motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of review.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of review. Karen?
Payroll warrant dated September 6, 2024 in the amount of $24,972.87. There is a little bit of pool. There'll probably be one more day because Beverly had swim certification for Putney School on Monday. So
Okay.
it'll be her and one lifeguard. So for the pool, it was $2,950.81. So that'll go off the next warrant. Fire department was $3,481. So that's increasing. I know the select board made a comment on the last warrant that payroll was higher than normal, but it should start going down a little bit.
Okay. Any questions on payroll?
Just put it out there for disclosure that I have a paycheck from the fire.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. Then moving on to accounts payable.
Accounts payable dated August 24th through September 6th, 2024, in the amount of $125,573.38. On this warrant, you have M&T Bank, 2 loan payments. One is for the fire department exhaust system, and the other one is for the 21 Western Star dump truck. On here, you see Crown Point Excavating for $31,500. That is crushing of 4,500 yards of material down at the Dummerston Putney Pit. And everything else is kind of standard.
Do we split that payment with Dummerston?
No, that's our half.
Okay. Oh, I see. All right.
Yeah.
What's the works on paper?
Works on paper is town clerk's office for restoration of land records.
Any other questions on accounts payable? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, moving on to public comments on items not on the agenda. Does anyone on the select board have anything to say? 1 second. I do have something to say. At our last select board meeting on August 21st, 2024, I removed a member of the public from our select board meeting for repeatedly violating our rules for public comment. I believe I was justified in this action. However, the manner in which I removed her was unprofessional, it was startling, and it was done in anger. And for that, I would like to apologize to her and to the public. It was a breach of decorum on my part, and I will strive to do better in the future. I also regret my behavior because it overshadowed the reason why the member was removed and instead made it about what was being said. The member was present when I read the following statement. Order and decorum shall be maintained throughout the meeting. Personal, impertinent, threatening, or profane remarks will not be tolerated. She was expected to follow this rule, but she did not. Instead, the member of the public interrupted us 10 times, made rude comments, and issued what I clearly heard to be a threat of bodily harm, which is the point at which a difficult situation became intolerable for me. When she continued to be disruptive, even after we had moved on to another subject, I made the decision to remove her. Again, I regret the manner in which I did it, but I stand by the action. I understand that there are people who are passionate about certain ongoing and controversial issues in town, the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust Alice Hallway project being one of them. I understand we may all have differing points of view about all sorts of matters surrounding it. I understand there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration on both sides of this issue. I see it boiling over in so many other places. Social media, the co-op, the diner. I see the dialogue coming out of these places mimicking the current national divisive discourse, which has definitely found its way into our small, local body politic. We need to try and fight against that impulse. That is one reason why I try to keep hard and fast to these rules in this space, to provide us with one place where we have to be civil to each other, no matter how deeply we disagree. Like healthy boundaries and communication strategies in a difficult conversation you might have with a loved one, our rules and procedures are meant to help us hear each other in constructive and civil ways, even when, or especially when, we are angry. Making rude comments, using threatening language, or constantly interrupting are not healthy ways to communicate in relationships. They are not useful in this forum either. That's why we have these rules, and that's why I read the same reminder out at the beginning of each meeting, so that everyone is on the same page. Let's all strive to have healthy and civil communication within those boundaries, in all of our interactions, not just here. I will strive to do so too. Thank you. Are there comments in the room? Mr. Fairman?
Madam Chair, we who walk regularly around Putney Village may notice details that we would not, or others might not notice when they're driving. Hence a letter that I'm about to share with you for future consideration. What is the speed limit in Putney Village that I'll briefly summarize? The speed limit in Putney Village is the last posted speed limit that drivers saw. Depending on where a driver entered Putney Village limits, the speed limit may be 30 miles per hour, 35 miles per hour, or not posted for different drivers at the same location in the same and opposite lanes, violating the mandatory national speed limit sign standard cited and quoted below. I'll take the liberty of handing these to our town manager, and she can pass them on in due course. Also, I'd like to to say that, as always, I admire your humane and wise leadership of our select board. And in case I needed it, I brought along this evening for your information the Vermont statute on the subject of criminal threatening. And mindful that there is an attorney present, I do commend to you what the American Civil Liberties Union and the Supreme Court of the United States have said on the subject. But it certainly is an interesting one. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you done with your original comment?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, so we can read this in due time? That would be great. Jeanette?
Thank you. So, Jeanette from Putney. And I have two things. First of all, I know that most of the time when people come and make public comment, it's a problem or an issue. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for buying the ball field and making it available to people. I drive on Sand Hill Road periodically to find beavers and herons and stuff. And when I drove by there on Saturday, it was wonderful. It was full of families and people and having a great time and little kids dancing around. So I want to thank you for that. And I may have a comment later on under number 10 about that, but I do want to thank you. My second thing is, as your representative to the rescue board, I want to make you aware of the town consortium that will be held on September 22nd. And all 14 member towns will get that invitation. And I'm hoping that people will come. Unfortunately, it is on a Sunday afternoon, which is too bad. But of the 14 towns, there was not one single evening that there was not a select board meeting. So the board voted to do it this way, and also to do it this way because it's important that all the towns hear the same thing at the same time. And sometimes when you're in a setting like that, if somebody asks a question, it stimulates another comment or another question. So this is an opportunity to not only learn more about rescue itself, but about EMS developments and trends that are happening. And I'm just going to encourage you to come and learn about this valuable resource and service that we have. I have to say, when I was in the Senate and I chaired the committee that dealt with EMS, I thought I knew something. And when I got on the board, I found out that I really don't know anything. And so I think it's really important to come. It also is the time when there will be a discussion on the upcoming contracts. So please, it would be great if everybody came, but at least some members should come.
Is that open to the public as well, or just select boards?
I think if public people wanted to come, they probably could. I don't think, it's a town consortium. It's a consortium of all the 14 member towns. And so it isn't restricted. And they'll have some kind of goodies for you to eat at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I don't know what.
Okay, so anybody on the select board able to make that date? Don't know, tentatively, okay.
I plan on going.
I might
Is
be
that
able to
right
make
there?
it, but- okay.
And I'd be happy to carpool with anybody who wants to.
Okay.
So Jeanette had a comment and was curious whether the Putney Fire and EMS committee, is that something?
Keep finishing your sentence.
Is
What
that
about
something that they
that we
would want to, should we
participate in?
entertain that or not?
I mean, I think we could invite people, but I don't think there's any reason not to share it with them and see if anybody wants
Right.
to go.
And I guess I'd like to ask Evan, if anyone from the fire department, rescue, you?
Yeah, I'll put it out to them and see.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, are there comments online? Oh, more public comments in the room?
Sure.
Thank you. Catherine Steffen. I'm here tonight as chair of Discover Putney, which many of you have heard about or participated in some of our events. And I just wanted to give you a little update from Discover Putney. I don't know that there will be items that will be brought to the select board, but I'd like to keep you informed. One is the very excellent news that Discover Putney was awarded a grant from the Vermont Community Foundation to put in place a few critical projects that have come out of the Discover Putney membership, which is to say, going all the way back to our future Putney and then the Downtown Revitalization Task Force. There were a lot of wonderful ideas and movements, but we really needed the funding in order to get traction. So very excitingly, we have received that grant and we will be going forward. There are two that everyone will be hearing about soon, including select board members. One of them is a downtown identification sort of signage project, wayfinding, directing people toward downtown businesses. I've been speaking with Karen about that. I know that the town is interested in a branding project. We want to make sure that we stay in communication so that we're working together, that we're using all of our very valuable dollars to the best possible end. And the other is actually a little save the date for everyone. On September 29th, we are going to have the first Discover Putney Main Street Festival, which is continuing on the tradition that was started by last year's block party. And this Main Street Festival sounds very large and grand. We do hope that it will be wonderful, but don't worry, we're not talking about parades or street closings or anything large scale in that way. But we do hope that it will be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to gather and celebrate our town and our local businesses. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But it's September 29th, which is a Sunday between 2 and 5 p.m. So,
are there posters up anywhere? I haven't
no,
seen
they're
anything.
going to be jumping up. So
Okay.
yes.
Sandwich boards,
So.
we all like sandwich.
Sandwich boards. Duly noted. Thank you.
All right, are there other comments in the room? Doug, and I'll get to you in a second.
I'll stay back here so we can photograph you, but then I'm going to come up there and hand you some handouts. I intend to just take a couple of minutes. Let me just give you a little bio, 30-second thumbnail, so you can understand where I'm coming from. When I studied industrial engineering and operations research, and I also got a grant from Shell Oil to study petroleum. When I studied industrial engineering, the one class that I've used in my career is investment analysis, analyzing one investment versus another one, very technical. I also had a human factors class, which I've never forgotten, although I've never practiced it. I'm going to tell you about it in a little bit of detail here in a few minutes. And I have a nice picture of a project that I worked on so you can understand what I did. So I went to work for American President Lines as a corporate planner, and then I got into my career. But the point I want to make here at this point is when I moved to New Jersey for a job with a Japanese steamship company, and while I was there, I studied Tai Chi from a young lady who was under the tutelage of Master Joe, who I can't remember his last name. He actually was killed, he was T-boned leaving his driveway near Suffern, a town near Warwick, where he had his Tai Chi farm. As he was leaving his driveway, gravel driveway, similar to here, to get onto the highway, which is paved, he didn't see the car that hit him and killed him. He was born the same year as my dad, so I made a mental note of that. So last week, and thank you for your comment, by the way, Deborah made a comment that I very distinctly caught my attention. She mentioned 45 degrees. I'm a numbers guy. Everything else kind of went right by me. The number 45 degrees. When I thought about it, I looked at my Google map on my phone and I realized that what they call an obtuse angle means you've got to turn your head. And I almost caused accidents just like Master Joe. I could have been killed a couple times because I didn't see the car coming. So that leads me into this. In the human factors, could you turn those up? Yeah. In the human factors class, we all had to take a part of the human body and analyze it, degrees of freedom. The one I picked, and my partner, was the Atlas and Axis vertebrae. And so we studied that. This is the Atlas, and this is the Axis. And I'm not going to go into the detail, but the point is, I'm 77 years old. Master Joe was 81 when he died. I think he died the same way I've almost died, getting out of my driveway. And in many roads around here, you have to look over your shoulder, and if you can't twist your body, you just can't see, unless you look in your mirror. So I looked at the Google map on my phone, and on the next page, you'll see a picture of a big crash right there. That's where you exit the proposed parking lot of the Wyndham Windsor project. And you can see very vaguely, it's a dark arrow with the big caution signs in the middle. It shows where you would exit the driveway and the angle you would have to look to see traffic. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take for a car to get from there to here, but it's probably 5 to 10 seconds. I'm not going to go any further. I'm not a traffic analyst, but I'm just guessing at that point. But the point is, the person exiting has to look both ways, and if they're old like me, they're going to end up in a collision. So my solution is to, if you can see the dark green here where Alice Hallway is to close that road off through traffic and let the mover go through and use it for parking for the community garden and farmer's market, but close it off to through traffic. Which gets me to, and I don't know if that's even plausible, but that's what I logically come up with as a conclusion. On the next page, you'll see a picture of the other part of the solution, which is to open up Carroll Brown, 2 lanes, both directions, and that kind of might dovetail with the roundabout if that ever happens. But make that a major artery to get in and out to Putney Commons, the co-op, and you don't have to worry about the traffic and the curve in the road and the people getting killed or maimed or whatever on that apex of that road. The final picture is just a refresher. This is a proposal that I made a couple years ago for the roundabout. All I'm saying, putting this in here, is to say that it would dovetail. In fact, I had it as a 2-lane road at that point in February 2023. So I just put that out there for your consideration. I'm not asking for any action, but I do want you to consider it as an option. There's probably a dozen more, or maybe 2 or 3 options. But I like this one. This, to me, is logical. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any extras? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, 1 second. I think I have Ron? Is it Rod or Ron? I forget. I've never met you before. This is the first time I've seen you.
Rod or Ron.
Ron, hi.
And
Hi. Nice to meet you face to face.
my concern is the disparity of property taxes in this year, and I'm very visual, so I spend more time looking at graphs, because it helps me understand it. And this graph is a scatter plot, and what it does is that each of the dots on that scatter plot is a property owner, and where they're placed on the graph is where they are relative to their property. The value of that property is determined by just looking at the 2023 appraisals, because that's the basis for the increase that people are facing. And the vertical bars are
Could I get you to maybe step aside from the camera?
So that you're on the camera.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Phil.
Oh, yeah.
The vertical bars are the average within each the $50,000 range. And you can see that, that at 100%, someone is paying twice the property tax they paid last year. And when you go up into the 200% range, it's just like mind-boggling. And I think there's probably a reasonable correlation between the value of someone's properties and their ability to pay, and the prospect of paying double the property tax. It's just, I mean, how can people do it? Now, week before last, I started trying to set up a meeting with the listeners, and we'll still do that. But to me, the issue is pretty simple. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, it is a result of the complicated, the complexity of the reappraisal. But it doesn't take, it seems straightforward to me that there's a real skew to this, and it is that essentially people with a property valued in 2023, with a property valued at $400,000, are paying proportionally more of their property tax, the increase in their property tax. As the value of their property goes down, their increase goes up dramatically. And someone with more than a property worth more than that $400,000 starts out at the kind of Putney average, but then trends down as the property is more valuable. Now, initially, this was explained to me as a function of essentially of the valuation of the first 2 acres of land. When I had a grievance hearing here, and I specifically asked at that hearing what the methodology was for determining the value of the land. And I was told that the overall appraisal was the beginning point, and then the appraised value of the house was taken off that, and the remainder was the value attributed to the land. And looking at the numbers involved here, there's not that kind of simple sort of treatment. Something's going on that is really, first of all, it's not transparent, and so I can't figure out, and I don't think anyone could, given the numbers that are, the data that's available to the public at this point. You can't figure out what's going on. And the skew is a real bias, and it indicates that something is, I mean, it's a dramatic, it will be, and now that it's happening, is a real, it will change the nature of Putney dramatically. Particularly impacting, I believe, younger adults who are starting out, and they may have the good fortune to find a small house to purchase, and then build on that. But it's not going to happen because they're not going to be able to afford these kinds of property tax burdens. So we're becoming, or we will become, and we're well on our way to becoming a town that is populated by people who are land wealthy. And, you know, have less of that property tax increase burden upon them. And, you know, it's just, there are many questions that come from this and the bias, and particularly when there's not transparency, so that someone can't figure out, or not told, there's no way to grieve because of this circular argument, well, the land is just what's left over after we take out the improvements, the building improvements. I mean, if there are factors in that we could grieve, what are they? And they're not, you know, they're not specified. They're not, you know, they're not given a real value. So basically, the grievance process does not apply. That's what I mean by transparency. Mm-hmm. You can't. There's no basis for you to grieve. Now, it may, you know, my understanding is that some of the improvements on the land are things such as whether you're on a septic system or you have you can hook up to the town sewer, water, and then are you on a private road or are you on a public road? I live in a house, and the septic system is 50 years old. You know, someone up the hill or down the road has got a much larger and newer septic system. Mine's going to fail, and at that point, I'm stuck. That's an example of what's unknown. That could be a factor or it could not be a factor. And because there's no consistency, I mean, the variation, it's not huge, but there is variation that you know, some people with essentially the same, you know, with 2 or 3 acres, some of those people are paying, their land value is significantly less than what others have for essentially the same land. And I'm hesitant to say this, but if this were the SEC looking at this graph, they would see that it's a potential indicator of fraud. So that's where we would get into serious trouble as this town. That comes from that, you know, that something's going on that's favoring some people far more than it's favoring others. What is that? And why? I mean, I know how it is, I know what it is in terms of, you know, my graph and the points on that graph. But why? I go on to suggest some ways that we could come to, I believe, a fairer solution to collecting the property taxes that we need to collect. And in my mind, if everyone essentially faced the same increase, close to it, that we would accept it much more readily. It may be, that average may be burdensome to many of us, but it seems fair. This is not fair. And that unfairness is why I then say there's at least an apparent potential for fraud.
Okay, can I stop you there?
Okay.
So the reappraisal process, is certified by the state at the very end. They go through a 3-pronged process to make sure that the reappraisal is done up to snuff and up to speed. So fraud is a strong word. I do encourage you to speak with the listers because there is a way to suss out the differing factors on your land, and I'm sorry your grievance process didn't pan out that way. I'm not sure why it didn't, I wasn't there. But you can in fact grieve your land and your house at a grievance. And you can grieve all of those different factors, and they should be readily available on your lister card if you get it from the listers themselves, not the one that's online. I agree that the one that's online is short on details, a lot of details. So as far as, I don't personally, we've had this conversation privately, I don't personally believe there's an issue with the reappraisal itself. I do agree that there is issues with inequity, and there is legislation happening at the state level to address that. Already the PVR, which is the Property Value and Review, is coming out with a study due out in December to address some of those issues. I know that doesn't help us right now because our taxes are due in 2 weeks, but I also agree that there's definitely an issue with how we tax people. In property tax specifically, but I don't believe that there was an issue with the reappraisal itself. It followed standard reappraisal practices. The company that came in was certified to do it. They were approved by the state of Vermont, and they brought us up to more than less than fair market value, as indicated by our CLA. So, unfortunately, the real estate market has gone through the roof, and that's just a fact. So, I'm still talking. So as far as that is concerned, I want to be careful with the word fraud, because if it is fraud, it goes all the way up to the IAAO, which is the International Assessors and Appraisals Association. So let's not go there, okay? I do encourage you to talk to the listers to gain a little bit more understanding on how your property works.
Let me remind you that I have talked to the listers. That's the purpose of the grievance hearing. That's your opportunity to talk to them. And
it sounds like you didn't get a lot of good information out of it, that's all I'm saying. It sounds like you didn't get a lot of good information out of it, that's all I'm saying.
No, I got very disparate information, and it, the argument that the value of the land is arrived at by taking the large appraisal and then subtracting off the improvements.
That's how the land schedule is, the baseline schedule is created. That's not how everybody's land is assessed. We're getting into the weeds, and this is why I wanted to talk to you privately, because there's some pieces of this that I'm not sure that you and I are understanding where we're coming from yet. And I do work in assessor's office, so I do know a little bit about this. And I was a lister in the town of Putney, so and I know that usually the listers are very patient with people and try to explain things. It may be that they had so many grievances that they couldn't do it at that point, but And I'm happy to talk to anybody offline on how reappraisal works.
Okay, and I've tried to be forthright and transparent with you. Here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm thinking.
Sure.
In that, you know,
But I'd be happy to sit down with you and look at your property record card, that's all I'm saying.
And probably it would be appropriate to do that after I do get the opportunity to talk with the listers again. It would help if I had a little bit more data, you know, specifically what within the property tax categories, what's the basis for someone's land payments, and then what's the basis for the value of the house. I can get that going online and looking at the lister's cards, but boy, it's not, even they are not really straightforward. And so if simple basic information like that, townwide, but specific with each, just as the grand list is specific, but it doesn't break out the land and the improvements, the buildings.
Okay, I haven't gone to look at the actual property record card, so I don't know, but I feel like this is still a discussion we should have offline before we go further down this path.
Okay. And I want to say I've lived in Putney for 50 years, and it is, you know, I essentially sort of, with my heart and soul, bought into property, into Putney. I would not be able to do that now, not because I wouldn't be able to afford to do it. And so it pains me, because it you know, it's not just me, but our children, our kids can't come back.
Yeah, I agree.
And, you know, what are we if we're not a kind of community that takes care of all the people that live here and treats them fairly? So that's why I'm coming to you, and will continue to. I think there are some simple ways to address the problem, straightforward, simple ways that would make sense. Whether they would appeal to the Vermont Tax Department, I'm not so sure, but that is an area for further exploration.
Absolutely.
So, thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you.
Is there any comments online?
Actually, I just want to be cautious that we're not opening up, you're asking for other comments.
I'm asking for
Other
other
public
comments on items not on the agenda.
Okay,
because that
all
is
right,
still
I
where
just
we are.
wanted to make sure that we weren't asking for comments on conversation about our tax situation, because we'll be here all
Right,
day.
no, and I believe there is a forum coming up that Mike Murphy is putting together, and hopefully some other people will be able to attend that, and we can get some more answers. But I do encourage people to reach out to the listers and get your actual property record card, not the one that's online, because that one doesn't have any information on it. And like I said, I'd be happy to look at people's property record cards with them if they are feeling intimidated by the listers or don't want to spend time in that room. I'm going to go with Mr. Fairman first, because he was waiting for a bit.
Madam Chair, referring to the next to last speaker's talk, I'm going to ask a follow-up question that may actually need to be answered by our town manager regarding the proposed roundabout at the intersection of Putney Landing Road, Route 5, and the Carroll Brown Way. What is the current status of that proposal?
It is with the state of Vermont.
meeting.
That's
The
where
state
it
of
is.
Vermont. The state of Vermont does have it, Mr. Fairman. They've had it for a while, so I don't have an update on the status.
What are they supposed to be doing?
Reviewing it and coming out to look to see if it's a viable project.
Thank you.
Yeah. But time will tell, Mr. Fairman. Time will
Indeed.
tell.
V-Trans is not known for moving that fast, much as we would like them to. So, Doug.
Yeah, just very quickly, and generally everybody being a numbers guy, those increases are based on the previous appraisal. It may be the previous appraisal, depending on when it was made, is incorrect. My appraisal was done in 2018 when I bought the house. Somebody else's might have been done years before or years recent. So you've got to look at the whole package. And that's all I want to say.
Yeah, thank you. They teach whole classes on this, so if you want to go to, want to become a Vermont property assessor, they are looking for people. You can go to whole bunches of classes on mass appraisal and other concepts that are fascinating and fun if you're somebody like me. Are there other comments online on items not on the agenda? Any other comments in the room? Anybody on the select board?
Just one that, it was a point of confusion to me at the time and remains in regard to your statement. I did not perceive the member of the public to be making a threat. And admittedly, it was a confused situation, but I'd just like to say that I didn't hear a threat, so.
I believe that everybody heard what they heard, and I heard something that was clearly a threat, and that's all. I'm going to leave it at that. So, moving on to Fire and Rescue Department report.
And then,
All right. So, with the EMS side of things, on August 5th, a group of folks went over to Vermont EMS Academy. We did a bunch of live scenarios on a couple of their mannequins, and basically came out with a training schedule based on performance. Since then, obviously, we've started running calls. That was on August 6th, and basically took over the first response piece that rescue was running in the interim. So far, we've had 100% coverage on all of our calls. Since the beginning of August, we've had 7 members go through a Vermont EMS licensing at the first responder level. So we have 7 brand new VFers, and they've basically entered into their next phase, which is going to be kind of the mentoring and clearance phase once they actually receive their license. So Karen had asked for some call statistics, and basically from July 24th through September 2nd, there's 35 total calls for service for the fire and rescue. Out of that, there's 13 fire calls, 17 EMS calls, and 5 co-responses. So that's where both pieces kind of respond together. Those all being motor vehicle crashes. I don't know how far into detail you want to go tonight, Karen.
good.
Outside of that, there's been a lot of effort on behalf of Mark Considine from Vemsa and Rescue Inc. I'd like to say thank you to him for a lot of his time and patience through the last couple trainings. I'd like to thank Daniel and Billy. Together with Mark, we've come out with a pretty decent training schedule coming up. Same with Dr. Swozy. So right now we're meeting, Dr. Swozy and I are meeting about once a week just to review some call data, reports, and trends. Based on that, we have some goals that we're going to be setting, as well as some future trainings that he's going to come in and teach for us. So, but yeah, so I'd like to thank Rescue, everyone that's currently running the calls, and so far things are looking pretty good.
Can I add to that?
ahead.
So I just want to add that, so the fire also, they do trainings on Tuesday nights. They had 17 folks down there last night. I looked at the roster today and there are 29 people on that roster between fire and EMS, and some are doing both. So, back in April, when everything was slowed and shut down, you know, we had about 30 people, 31 people. And so I just want to say, after everything that's happened, those numbers have come back up. And I too want to say thank you very much to both the EMS side, Evan, Billy, Daniel, also fire. I mean, these folks are working together. The equipment is in better shape than it has been in a while. EMS has updated all their medications and what they need for, you know, going to a call. You know, there's, money's been spent, but we're okay. And people are showing up and going to calls. So I want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you. Did you have anything else to add?
Nope.
I can't, so trying to see why.
No,
Okay, does the select board have any comments on that?
I just want to say that I really appreciate the report. Yeah, thank you. That's super helpful.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, and I, you know, and knowing how many volunteers we have active is also, like, that's one of the things I would really like to hear in the report, like you just did verbally, but that's something, you know, I'm really psyched to be getting that update, and hope we can keep doing that.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Are there comments online about the fire and rescue department report? Any comments in the room to that?
I just was going to say that this is another reason why you might want to go to the consortium meeting, because it's at the academy and you can see where all the training for the EMS side happens and see the little mannequins that actually cry and bleed.
Wow, that's actually having legs or arms.
Well, it is a pretty impressive facility, and
Wait, where's the facility?
it's, do you know where the Riverbend
Yeah.
grocery store is?
Yeah.
If you're going toward the Riverbend on Route 30, and there's a motel there, and right before you get to Kindle Farm on the left, it was a house at one point, and most recently it was a bar,
yeah.
and that's the academy.
And
Right
the
next,
academy is what?
VEMSA, Vermont EMS Academy.
Okay, I really appreciate, particularly with all the EMS and the firefighting folks, that if you, that you explain to us all what your acronyms mean, because you use them a lot and we have no idea.
That's fair.
And the VEMSA it was a result of there not being a lot of training facilities in Vermont for EMS, for paramedic, and all the levels. So that's,
Cool.
it was started.
Okay.
Yep.
And you did say there's gonna be food, right?
Well, they said light refreshments. I have no idea what that means.
All right. You're all set? You're all set?
Thanks.
Everybody in
Thank
the
you,
room?
Evan.
Any comments in the room? All right, then moving on to the town manager report.
Yeah, I think the only thing I need to say is Putney Mountain Road is, it was supposed to start stormwater mitigation construction today. It's been delayed, so it appears it will start on Friday, which is the 6th. And that'll be for 2 weeks. There's signage out there.
There's a detour to get.
There is a detour, there's a post on Facebook. So that's the only thing I have to report.
Okay, any comments on the town manager's report? Mr. Garman?
Madam Chair, I have a question that perhaps could be answered by our town manager. What is the status of the new sidewalk, of the new crosswalk opposite the library?
That might be in the planning commission's report. which
Okay,
Sue
well, I
Coakley-
defer.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments in the room? Any comments online? On the town manager's report, select board's good? All right. Moving on to boards, committees, and commissions. Conservation Commission status report, which is Ann Carey.
Actually, this is going to sort of go over things that the Conservation Commission has been involved with over time, in terms of planning and in terms of the importance of our forests, which sometimes sort of get left out. But indeed, they're incredibly important. I gave you way at the back of this packet a map which shows both the global situation with carbon sequestration, and this bottom map, the very bottom map, is the United States. And you'll see that in both of those situations, New England and along the eastern coast of the US is still one of the most heavily forested areas. And with the forest fires going on in the US, I think we're very lucky to still have as much forest as we do here. And basically what the Conservation Commission is looking at is how we can continue to conserve forest and keep carbon sequestration going, flood resilience, and all the other benefits that forests provide for us. And that was summarized in our town plan on page 10, which I start off with, because this is a initiative started by the state and the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. The Vermont Conservation Design is something that's been worked on for years with numerous conservation partners, identifying from the town plan, quote, the lands, forests, and waters necessary to maintain Vermont's functional natural environment and biological diversity that are essential to clean water and air, carbon sequestration, flood protection, and climate resilience. So some of the maps that I have given you, in fact, the first two maps that I gave you, relate to how the state and these conservation groups have placed Putney's forests within that larger conservation design. And we are pretty much, we have some priority forests and high priority forests, and we sort of provide a link between, in some cases, southern New Hampshire across the Connecticut River, and then on over to the Green Mountains for wildlife that are moving around, seeking shelter, food, mates, whatever. So that's pretty special in terms of southeastern Vermont, the New Hampshire Vermont connection that we provide, especially in East Putney and down toward Canoe Brook in the other direction. The town plan relates to our forest. They've done a lot of work. They went through the entire forest blocks that the state had put together, and forest blocks are pretty much rated by the state by size. If there's a lot of linked land where an animal doesn't have to cross a road, that's part of a block, and the bigger the block, as far as the state is concerned, the more value it has. So that's this colored map right here, and the darker the color, there are three darker colors. Here, this is the western ridge line for Putney Mountain Works. Putney Mountain Association is trying to go after land here. This is a high priority block. Over here is Bear Hill. That's another high priority forest block according to the state and others who are working on this plan. And then there are four, what they call priority blocks, which is this color, the light gold, not the light yellow, which is all forest blocks 20 acres or more are on this map. the priority forest blocks are the light gold, and of those, only one, which was the East Putney Forest, pretty much between Route 5 and I-91. That section right there was chosen by the Planning Commission to also get looked at for some regulations that might help protect fragmentation of those forest blocks during development. I mean, if somebody wants to develop it, the idea is that they should do so in a way that doesn't fragment the existing forest. So for town meeting last time, Wyndham Regional, Jeff Nugent, produced this map for us, which is all the forest blocks, plus these are the blocks that the Planning Commission, the dark green is the blocks that the Planning Commission decided to take a look at and discuss in their bylaw modernization process, which Sue will be talking about.
So that's the piece you were talking about plus Bear Hill?
So what they did, if you take the multicolored state map,
Yeah.
is they took the dark colored ones along the ridge line.
Mm-hmm.
They took Bear Hill, which is important because it connects up to Rocky Ridge. And you can see that the animals do cross here. That's tracking info. And this is East Putney Forest down here. The dark blue lines on this map are results of the Conservation Commission tracking project that went on for years and years. It got a lot of data, and the darker the color there, the more animals that are crossing. And the animals are tending to move around the village center, on both sides. And this is a little anomaly down here, but this is also down in Friendship Loop.
Mm-hmm.
There's also obviously some activity. So the question there is, in regard to the tracking, the state has now done, the tracking didn't cover all. We didn't have enough trackers to cover everywhere. And the state has now come up with a new, much improved map done with an algorithm that looks at every road and picks out the most likely wildlife road crossings. You also have that map. And Sue can maybe say more about that in the future. And what we were thinking of wanting to do was to put conserved land which is actually conserved, you have a list of it, and town-owned lands onto this map, so that we know within these areas where we actually have permanently protected land, like the whole shebang, and town-owned land, and what we want to do with our town-owned land in terms of trying to contribute to conserving part of our forest. And I also have, this shows what's been conserved. This is an out-of-date map,
Okay.
but it's pretty good. I'll just pass it out. This is Wyndham Regional. Well, the idea is that it could be updated and put on the map. And Jeff Nugent has said if you all and Karen decide to request it, that it would be a couple hours worth of work to update this and get it out to them. So
2014,
yeah, so
2015.
and then very briefly on some of the conservation land, such as Beatrice-Aiken, we have a Conservation Commission member, Akiogi Takashi, better known as Ogi, who has been working very hard on redesigning and actually doing the work of what was designed, doing the trail work at the Beatrice-Aiken, because we had some really bad erosion problems there with all the rain that's been coming down. And the same situation has occurred on Bear Hill. Not so much erosion, but mud conditions. It's a wetland up there. It's a very important wetland, actually. It's a black gum swamp and tons of vernal pools. And there's a right-of-way that is being used by ATVs, and it's gotten so muddy and so impassable that Tom Hinckley on the Conservation Commission has worked with landmark students to move that trail more into the forest so that it's more accessible. And then the town-owned land, the 50 acres on Route 5, right across from East Town Farm Road, that's where we're focusing, trying to get invasive buckthorn principally, although we also under control, and we've had some work days there, and that will be reported And then the other thing that was found last year was a new invasive coming up from, we think, Brattleboro, which has not been in Vermont before. It's called Japanese stiltgrass, or stiltgrass is what everyone refers to it as. And it is a very rapidly spreading grass, and that was found on one of the skid roads within that 50 acres. And we very luckily had help from a group of people who coordinate and help each other and they fundraise and they hire experts to help you control some of these things. So we're very lucky to have Mike Ball come out and help us deal with the stiltgrass. And one of our Conservation Commission members will be reporting on that buckthorn and stiltgrass initiative at the statewide meeting of Conservation Commissions tomorrow. So that's just within the land that we are working on. That's some of the things that are happening. That's aside from the planning. So that's it. Unless you got questions.
Does anybody else have any questions for Anne? Comments in the room, Mr. Chairman?
Madam Chair, the speaker referred to forest blocks. And what I'm wondering is, are those forest blocks arranged in such a way that they consider the riverine forest that extends through Dummerston, Putney, and Westminster that is divided for tax purposes into quite a number of small parcels?
The forest blocks are simply any piece of forest that's 20 acres or more, and they divide them up priority-wise by the size they are. In terms of riparian areas that run along streams, the state sort of views those as connectors. Like if that stream runs through a series of forest blocks, that would be considered a wildlife corridor in some ways, because wildlife will follow streams, trying to link things up. And then you're going to have to repeat the last part of your question.
Okay, to clarify my question, for example, properties in the area of Putney Landing Road and Old Depot Road extend from the crest of the hill down to the interstate, and beyond that it appears that it is mostly, where I-91 is near the river, it appears to be all state land. Now the point is there are a great many different parcels, and you're talking in terms of 20-acre forest blocks, and I'm wondering if your analysis therefore includes this forest, which is not just riparian, and that's why I didn't use that word, that extends all the way from the Dummerston-Brattleboro line to the Westminster or Rockingham line, with the exception of Great Meadow. And it is certainly quite a wildlife habitat where I live. We regularly see bear, bobcat, deer, and various small animals, including fishers.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if your analysis is addressing this area, or does a block have to be, so to speak, officially 20 acres before it's even included in the analysis?
That is on, I'm pretty sure that's on the map, and we can look at it, afterwards for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is there, and all of us have noticed over time that moving along the Connecticut River, and the piece you're talking about would be part of that movement corridor, has always been happening and is still happening. And part of the reasons for that is the I-91 and railroad land, which is just considered quote unquote no man's land. So it's wildlife land.
Indeed.
I agree with you totally on that one.
Are there other questions in the room? Are there comments online? Any other comments on the select board? Thank you, Anne, for giving us that report. That was really good. It's nice to hear from the Conservation Commission, and thank you for all your work. Next up is the Planning Commission status report.
Stand up here. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have copies of the report that I will give. And in my comments, I will address the question that Ann Carey just said about wildlife crossings and mapping in the town plan.
There was a sidewalk question too, just
okay.
Remember.
All right.
Not sidewalk, crosswalk.
Crosswalk, yes, that one too. Those two questions. So, Sue Coakley, Chair of the Putney Planning Commission. This is my monthly report. We missed August because it was a busy month and a vacation month, and here it is already September. In this report, I'm addressing what have been the primary focus of our work, which has been kicking off the Housing Needs Assessment and Action Plan project, also the Zoning Bylaws Modernization project, and also some really big news on moving forward the Town Hall renovation project. Those are mainly the topics here. I'll just briefly comment on the status of the Putney Landing sidewalk project. So the Select Board approved the Planning Commission to work with the town to write a grant to be able to do that project through the Transportation Alternatives Project. I am keeping a close eye on and I'm in touch with the director of the Vermont VTrans Transportation Alternatives Program, which is the best grant, will give us the most funding for this project. I expect the solicitation will come out by the end of this month with a proposal due by early December. It hasn't been issued yet. And we expect to apply for grants to be able to do that project. That schedule would be that they would approve the grant I think it would be by March that we would get a thumbs up, possibly the end of February. And from there, the town would go forward with the project. The likelihood of funding, I haven't seen the FY25 budget for that program yet, but I believe it's federally funded and is still well funded. So we expect to move that project forward, and the approval was to do what is called stage 1 of this, and the stage 1 is to have a walkway that would cross from the library over to the banks with a new walkway between the two banks over to Putney Landing Road. And there's a crosswalk there. No, I don't Putney Landing, sorry, it's the wrong thing. Home Depot, yeah, Old Depot Road. To the Laura Plant's house, which is an affordable housing project, there's a crossing there. And that's as far as that project would go. We would do that segment so we could get people safely across Route 5. That will be with a signal that pedestrians and bicyclists can operate. Greatly needed and far enough away from the intersection of Route 5 and Putney Landing Road to be for people to safely operate that and vehicles to stop. Phase 2, we agreed, the Select Board agreed, is that we really should fix that intersection, whether with a roundabout or some other, I'm not a highway engineer, designer, don't know, but a better solution, a safe one for vehicles coming up off the interstate, coming up Route 5, coming from Carroll Brown Way, possibly with a two-way intersection, but also pedestrians and cyclists. But is that a roundabout or is it some other solution? I really don't know. What I do know further is that VTrans would undertake that kind of project in their schedule for improvements to Route 5 in Putney. So I have not yet been able to ascertain what year that is. It isn't an every year thing by any means. I have not figured out how to read all of VTrans books and schedules, but I will be asking about that further just to make sure that I can say the year that it would be included, if they would do it, would be this year. And we do want to make sure that that is VTrans, is the they, is going to do appropriate planning for the project well in advance of the time for improvements in that section of Route 5. But they do own Putney Landing Road as well as Route 5. They're responsible for the maintenance of that. So it clearly is a project they have to do in their schedule. But it became quite clear that we really just need to fix that problem. People will still try to cross there even if we provided another back way to come through, and we will have that. But the closest point from A to B from Putney Landing Apartments, where you live, of course, over to the co-op and bus stop and all of that, is across that way, and people go that way. I see it all the time, and I know you do too. And I hope that we can change that and get that going. So I don't know the date yet, but it's something that is coming up in this whole, it's sort of phase 2 of this project.
Thank
That's
you.
that's what I know this time.
Thank you.
So Peg has a question.
I have a question about the status of the banks and where we are with the banks agreeing to give us the right of way
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, that will be part of the process. They're aware of it. Have we asked for approval? No, because we don't have money to do a project.
Okay, so we need to get the money before we get the approval.
Yeah, because there's really no play until we really have a way forward on it.
Right, well, I was thinking of it the other way. Like,
Yeah.
there's no play in, writing a grant and getting money if we don't have agreement from the banks that we
Yeah,
can put the,
Well,
it's 6-1 half.
it is, and it's worth another conversation. People change, and it's good to check in again about that. We didn't hear any particular pushback, but we also were not specific, right, about exactly where the walkway would go, because we need V-Trans to help us understand that. It's partly because there's driveways there. How do you place the walkway relative to driveways? Again, I could have my ideas, but I'm waiting for V-Trans to tell us what is safe. So I don't have a specific, we don't have a specific proposal, because that sight line, well, there's an example of it, would have to be
So
dialed
does
in.
that come with the money, or is it another
Yes.
2-part process that we have to do more planning?
No, we've done enough planning. We have a basic concept. What we need now
Okay,
is a very specific placement of where, things will go on the highway. So we have a proposal, but I think it's one that it'll go through another round of hearing, that's for sure. When this is done, there will be a public engagement process, not just the banks, but everybody,
yeah.
to make sure that the crossing is meeting the range of needs in the community. So it's a good question. Thank you, Peg. And I think probably another visit over there to talk with him about it is in order. That it was a while ago, like a year.
Yeah.
So, or maybe 9 months. Okay, any other questions on that Putney Landing project? Great, okay. So, Housing Needs Assessment Action Plan is kicked off. We had 2 Planning Commission meetings in August, a special meeting on August 1st with the Camoin Associates, the Project Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, and we are off really fast on that project. There's a lot of research going on. I want to thank Karen and town staff for their time and effort to provide responses to the data request to help us understand housing, particularly with the new assessment that was just done, and people learning how to use it to generate the information.
You're welcome.
There's a whole new system to learn. So maybe it's helping them learn it, but it sort of forced their hand about when to do it.
Right.
So I appreciate that. We also had focus groups, 2 days of focus groups. I know Karen had let you know about those on the 22nd, 23rd. We had about 40 people across 7 different groups that we met. And thank you to the fire station for hosting us for that. That was very nice. And Next Stage hosted a dinner that we had in the evening with the Housing Solutions Task Force and the Housing Advisory Committee. So that was very good. We're getting ready to issue a survey, a community survey, and I will say, people are very interested. I mean, we have a lot of interest from not only the advisory committee, but the task force. We're working together on the survey and its distribution, and I'm very happy to report that. That'll be launched on Monday, and there'll be a bunch of outreach. It'll probably go to the end of the month. It's supposed to be a 3-week survey. And we will have a community meeting in October on the 21st to talk about the results of the needs assessment, what we learned from the survey, the focus groups, their other research that they've been doing. And so that is on schedule. Our intent is to really have a complete report with everything in mid-December, have another community meeting to talk about the solutions. The October 21st meeting will be needs, but also what are the findings and what does that mean for strategies? What are some of the top things Putney needs to think about, and they will build out further. And then we'll have another community meeting in December with a full report with the strategies built out, and there'll still be project advisory input between all that. And that in December we would.
Can you just reiterate the date, that October, is it in?
If you, yes,
Oh, I see,
actually,
I see.
so I've given you an
21st.
attachment also,
Yes.
I should just mention, that is, I don't know, I find it helpful. It's a list of the participants, you'll see green, and their affiliation, so trying to get the range of perspectives, but we also put in a condensed schedule, so you can see what is happening when to the extent that we know it. If it's in italics, the dates aren't, nailed down yet, but the other ones, have been set. So that is the current schedule that we have. So, and then I have that also for the bylaws modernization project, which we kicked off last night, and we had an initial discussion about the schedule. We realized that there's a number of adjustments we need to make to work with the housing needs assessment, but we knew that was coming. That was why we talked about it. In fact, they want to do a survey also, and I said, let's see how much you can get out of the survey being done by Camoin for housing needs assessment, and then figure out what we need to do after that. And so there's a scramble right now to get that done by Friday. Yeah. But I think there's a pathway to that. And I think we're still dialing in the dates. You see they're all in italics, but the bottom line is that we expect the zoning regs to be updated and ready for public hearing late next fall. So it could be October, November, December, something like that. Last night we talked about, Wyndham Regional Commission is the consultant for that one, and they talked about some of the legislative changes that we need to consider and what the impact would be. We also talked about how do we identify the top issues in Putney. We talked about certainly getting the zoning administrator and the development review board to talk about what they think are some of the issues and needs to address, with the goal of trying to improve access to housing, addressing climate resilience that Anne was just talking about, and also economic development. How do we balance all those things together? And clearly, the challenge will come when we look at the forest blocks and development. For better, for worse, most development in Putney over the last 20 years has not been in the village center. We're seeing recent good activity, and that's wonderful, but most new housing has been outside the village. And, we agree, the town plan agrees with what Ann said. You want to minimize fragmentation. What are the incentives and approaches to try to encourage people to build out where there's already a footprint, where there's already a driveway or road or secondary road. So that'll be challenging, but we're just beginning, and we will learn from other towns, and there's new legislation that we have to comply with. Act 250 changes. It's complex. And that's one of the reasons it will take us till next October. We still don't really, Wyndham Regional Commission said we've digested the 23 Home Act implications for zoning. Mm-hmm. We're still digesting the 2024 Act 250 revisions and what they mean. That's still interpretation. So we'll have time to incorporate all that and what that means for Putney. We also want to take a look at where have been difficulties, in applications. Where have things been hard to do, unclear, inefficient, and where has it worked well, and what can we learn from that? So this phase right now is understanding the problems to solve in the zoning, and then more in the spring and the summer, we will dial in, what are the solutions, and we'll have several work sessions. We are thinking about doing rather than a town walkabout that Wyndham Regional proposed, is we have actually a self-guided tour that people can take to sort of understand where the different zoning areas are in town, and to look at what are some of the issues and needs there, and then bring people together to talk about that, what is there and what we've learned. So some ways to help people get a real feel for the needs and issues that we have as a town. But we'll have some other community meetings and plenty of opportunity for people to learn about, things like zoning 101, like what is it? What does it do? What does it doesn't do? What does the state do? What does the town do? Those are confusing issues for people. So we're getting started. We will have a more clear schedule for the zoning bylaws. We just did it last night. Haven't had a chance to to map it out quite yet, but very good input. I just want to tell you, the advisory committee process, which is new to the planning commission, is a very good one. Yeah, people are really stepping up to provide input and also to help. You know, I think it's great, and I recommend it. So we're just started, like we're only a month in for both of those, but so far it's going well.
Good.
So that's what I have on those two things. Though I will give one more shout out to the town because Rachel, who is here listening, was able to put a project page up for each of these projects, and we're beginning to use those. So that's really helpful, you know, to have that as a go-to place to put things. So kudos and thank you to Rachel. So Putney Hall renovation, town hall renovation. So this has been we've been thinking about it for a lot, so big things are happening. First is the RFP for architectural services is out. We had, that went out on the 9th of August with a due date of September 12th, I think it is. And, or 13th, I guess, the 13th. But we had a site review, Karen and Lisa Papazian hosted that, I was there, with those who would like to bid on it. And we had 10 architects and engineering firms show up. We were all like, wow, great, this is very good. And it was a very good discussion. We put together a Q&A summary from that conversation so that everybody could see what that was. So I think there's good interest in the project. At the same time, last week, so the 27th, 28th of August, like big days. You know, the 28th was the site tour. The 27th, the Vermont Department of Buildings and Services put out their solicitation for the MERP grant. This is the Municipal Energy Resilience Grant. I'm so glad that it's out. It came out on the 27th. I'm not so glad that grant proposals are due on the 20th of September. And this is probably our single biggest near-term opportunity for funding. And I will thank Karen and everyone who positioned the town very well for that funding. We could get $500,000. That does not require a match, but rather it can be used to match other money. It has to be for the measures that were in the energy audit that was done, and happily, the energy audit was updated. We went from about $90,000 worth of improvements, which made no sense for 2 floors. It was just, made no sense. And now, you know, they identified improvements that are more about $535,000, and then plus contingencies that they include in that, about $635,000. So that says if we have a MERP grant of $500,000 and we have other funding sources we are applying to, we can use that MERP funding to go more than $500,000 because we can leverage money for the ADA implementation funding from the Vermont Community Development Grant Program, which we are planning to do this fall as well, but other programs as well. So we are putting together right now a plan to apply for the full amount, and Putney comes out really very strongly in being a good candidate for the money and the criteria they have. And we're working with Wyndham Regional Commission, who let us know that there may not be a lot of people going after $500,000, and it's very likely that we could get that much money.
When do we fund out?
Well, very quickly. I mean, it was due on the 20th of September, no pressure.
I know.
But in November, they'll make the awards and we'll have the money maybe by the end of the year.
Wow, all right.
Because now they have to move some ARPA money.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Yay, they'll have to move then.
Yes, right. So anyway, clearly I'm excited about it. Karen, Lisa, and I have been working on this, are excited about it. So all of this at once, and we are talking to the Vermont Housing Conservation Board for their Rural Economic Development Initiative, or READY, which provides grant writing assistance. We're meeting with them on Friday to see if we can get some help from them. So we're sort of putting it together, and when you have your next meeting on the 18th of September, we'll provide a little update about where we are. But this could be really between the architecture, the RFP services and this grant, this project, I think, really has a way forward.
Nice.
And we're very excited about that. So any questions about, and also you can find the RFP, you have a link to that, as well as the information. Again, thank you, Rachel, for creating a project page where all this information can be about this. And I provided a link to that for you. So, any questions about that?
Any questions on the Select-Board? Any questions online? Sue? Any comments in the room? Karen?
So I just want to say thank you to Sue. There's a lot of planning that is happening, and I'm just, I haven't seen it, but working with her, it's all exciting. And so thank you for bringing everyone together. A lot of people are different groups in the community are communicating.
That's
and
great.
Things are, it's all good.
Engagement is great.
Yeah.
Real positive energy.
Yeah, that's
We
really
still need volunteers,
Mhm.
so,
Task force are a gateway drug too.
Yeah. Yes, it's a succession plan.
Yes.
right.
Yeah, but that actually,
Eventually to this line.
That's right.
well,
Right.
It's either uphill or downhill from there.
I have to agree that having short-term project advisory committees to work in a town process does help people learn about town government and get to build relationships and an affinity, maybe, for doing that work otherwise. So I do hope that's another outcome. So I just want to answer just one thing on Anne's report, if I might. I didn't talk about this in my plan, but Anne and I have been talking about these wonderful maps. We're so lucky that Jeff Nugent at Winter Regional Commission, he's really a top person in the state for doing this type of mapping. We struggled in the town plan and then ultimately did not include wildlife crossings and corridors per se, because we just don't have a consistent methodology for doing it. What Ann just talked about is the state now has a consistent methodology. It's a very good one. It's well-funded. It's what Putney could never do. It's what the Regional Commission would never have the funding to do on their own. So the idea of using the state's new mapping and data for wildlife crossings to update, provide further information about that for our forest blocks and for our map overall for the town is a very good thing. I haven't had a chance to talk with the commissioners about it because it wasn't on our agenda for last night, though we did talk about maps for zoning. But I do know that one of the issues was that we didn't have a consistent methodology that we had a lot of confidence in. And the new methodology that the Natural Resources Board has is really exceptional. It is basically using data based on looking at the ground, the topography, and the plants and forests that are there already. And Jeff Nugent has been part of the team actually to just say, how well does that predict where wildlife actually is? And it's very good. So anyway, I just want to say thank you to the Conservation Commission for continuing to work on improving our maps, and I would recommend getting that state data and using that to understand where corridors and crossings are. That will help be very good information as we try to solve the problem in zoning, for example, of development, climate resilience, natural resource conservation. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Madam Chair, addressing a question that was raised about, it was referred to as the bank regarding the proposed sidewalk through that strip of grassland. First, it is not the banks, it is a bank and a credit union. I'll come back to why that's important in a moment. I just looked at the tax maps while the discussion was ongoing, and it appears that the property line is pretty much in the middle of the strip of grass between the two parking lots. Now, M&T Bank, of course, is corporate, and a decision will come from somewhere on high. But on the other hand, 802 Credit Union is a financial cooperative of which a number of Putney residents, including myself, are member owners, and we will have a say. So the possibilities are, of course, if M&T Bank is perhaps not that willing, is either to run it right along the property line, half on each side, or to run it on the 802 credit union side. And I'm pretty sure that we Putney member owners could make that happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, any other comments? Does the select board want to take a break? Sure? Okay. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break, we'll come back at 7:10. Resuming our meeting, I think we're on the Putney Fire and Rescue Committee report, which is Peg.
Just a quick report, we've met twice, we're meeting our third time on Monday. We're deep into researching other fire departments, fire districts, looking at, we're going out and interviewing folks, looking at fire departments that are run by towns, looking at fire departments that are run by run through as nonprofits. We're just doing a lot of research right now, and probably at our next meeting we'll start talking about how exactly we want to, what the community involvement part of the process is.
Okay.
We'll let you know.
All right.
Anything else, Jeanette, that you want to add?
All right. Select board have any questions or comments? Anybody in the room? Anybody online about the Fire and Rescue Committee? All right, then moving on to Select Board new business, we have a letter of support for Building Communities Grant Program. Karen.
So this is a building and general services grant. It was sent to me by Ruby McAdoo at Putney Community Cares. So I consulted with Ruby and Libby North, who is the rec league. This grant is due September 10th, which is next week. So like Sue, we can't seem to get ahead of them.
No.
And then this has to be a shovel-ready project. So I kept thinking, what can we, use this money for? It's a 1-to-1 match. And we had an estimate completed by Bergeron Construction Company over in Keene. And to replace the double metal doors as you enter the pool area. And then the second set that go into the pool. So the entry doors do not work. Only one side works. You can't open the other side. They're rusting out. Water gets in underneath. So I said, well, why not? Let's see if we can, maybe get some grant funding for this, for the doors. So I'm asking the select board for a letter of support. I've requested other agencies that use the pool for letters of support. To replace both sets of metal doors, it's $23,527. I know.
It's amazing how much stuff comes.
Right, just doors.
This grant max is $25,000.
Okay.
I would request, if we get this grant, that the match come from the pool fundraising special account, which we have like $33,000 in there. So fingers crossed, the money's there. I mean, we fill out the paperwork, do the application, send it in, see what happens.
We need to do maintenance on the building, so.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's part of our town plan actually too.
Mhm.
There's 2 different sections. So, I love the new town plan. I just go there and reference that.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
very
no.
well laid out.
Yes.
All right, so should I read this letter
Sure.
to the record? This is letter of support recreational facilities grant program to whom it may concern. This letter is in support of the Putney Public Pools application for grant funding. This funding will provide safe operational entry and exit replacement doors with added security for our seasonal facility. The Putney Public Pool was constructed in 2003 with a bathhouse and pump room, replacing the vintage 1968 pool. The pool, I like that word. The pool is located behind the Putney Central Elementary School. It is accessible from the village by a public sidewalk. The pool, during the months of June through late August, avails swim lessons, movie nights, a diversity of summer camps, along with water aerobics and lap swimming. The town pool prides itself on being a welcoming space for youth, adults, and visitors. The town pool is a vital resource for our community. This funding request is consistent with our 2023 Putney Town Plan, which refers to section Natural Resources and Land Use Objective 2.7, maintain and enhance recreational opportunities for Putney residents and visitors, and section Community Facilities and Services Objective 6.1, providing the community services and facilities to sustain the quality of life in Putney. Policy 6.8, maintain and improve municipal recreational lands and facilities. As there is immense community-wide sustenance for the activities the municipal public pool currently offers, and because it is in keeping with our town plan, we support this endeavor. Respectfully, Town of Putney Select Board, and I guess I'm signing it. I have a couple of questions. The avails is, I'm not sure that's the right use of that word. And
we change it to provides.
Provides, okay. And sustenance,
Should be support.
Support, okay. And then the only other thing I was thinking was, I like the fact that we have the town plan stuff in here. Is there a way to bullet point it or something?
Sure.
Just so that it's clear. Otherwise, I'm good with it.
Okay.
Anybody else have concerns, questions, comments, changes?
Nope.
Okay, so, can I hear a motion?
Sure, I move that with the changes noted, we authorize, oh no, it's you, that we encourage you to. With
the food.
Right. Okay, so what are we doing here with the changes noted?
Yep.
Approve the letter. Approve the letter of support for the Recreation Facilities Grant Program.
And authorize myself to sign it.
And authorize Eileen to sign it.
Okay, is there, okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve, with the changes noted, to approve the letter of support for Recreational Facilities Grant Program and authorize myself to sign it. Is there further discussion among the board? Are there comments in the room? Comments online? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so Karen, if you just make those changes and I can come in.
Sure.
To sign it. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so the next piece is the controlling the use, it's old business, and it's the controlling the use of alcoholic beverages on town property ordinance. Last meeting, I said if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Fletcher gave us some pointers, one of them did not make it in here, sorry. Still using the wrong citations in the very beginning. But then me and Karen and Peg all attended an ordinance training. And I was writing notes as they were speaking. And so a couple of the things that were takeaways from that was, one, keep it simple. And two, don't use shall, use will. So, so with that in mind, I took out the various definitions of alcoholic beverage and just said, the state defines it, you can go find out how the state defines it. Basically, it's that's where that came from. And so all the other pieces, all the other ones, malt beverages, spirits, I think we all know what an alcoholic beverage is. So there was that. I took out the Putney School District. I changed shall to will. I changed all of the different various definitions of alcoholic beverages to alcoholic beverages. I added where you might get your permit from, the town manager, duly authorized delegate. Town's public event policy, because we do have one. So questions I had were enforcement. I mean, they were talking a lot about having a local person enforce this with an actual ticket book that we could get somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So, but we originally said that we wanted the county sheriff and the Vermont State Police to enforce. I assume we still wanna do that, but that's one question. The question is, we can fine up to $800 by statute. This one has $100. I believe what I was hearing was that if we have that, then we should also have what's called a waiver fee, which is a fee that would be lower that people would just pay without having to go to court. Because the administrative fee for that is $12.50. So we would get less than the $100 for if they went to court. So we could put in a waiver fee of, I don't know, $50 or something. So then the rest of this is the will, and I changed Brattleboro reformer to comments. So that was it. Take it away.
I also had another run at it, because the more I look at, I mean, I appreciated all the changes that you made, but it still struck me as, I mean, there's stuff in here that made me crazy, like defining the word possession by using the word possession.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I mean, we've got so many public place is a place to which the general public has a right to resort. I mean, I don't know, does that mean like resort as in spa or what? Anyway, I took the whole thing apart.
Okay.
I took the whole thing apart and rewrote it, so, and
Okay.
not to,
Well, why not?
at the risk of knocking us back yet another meeting. It's also just to state the prohibition clearly. Once I parsed it, possession by any person of an open container of alcoholic beverage at any public place is prohibited. Period. And then backing away from that is the exemptions. And mostly what I had in mind there is what's going to happen with the ball field. Somebody shows up with a bottle of beer to watch a ball game on a Saturday afternoon, is that going to be a problem? And I really don't think it ought to be a problem. So, having started with the basic prohibition, trying to find a way, I mean, I think we need to have some process for authorizing the consumption of alcoholic beverages at ball games. The problem is the way it originally, it talks about this permits to a publicly recognized organization. What the heck is that? I mean, I assumed it meant something like, like the Firefighters Association, but if somebody is taking responsibility for putting on a ball game. So I threw in a definition of that, but then the problem you have is that, okay, you've authorized the association, but what if one of the spectators isn't a member of the association and he has a beer? So I dealt with that by saying that the organization receiving the permit will be deemed to be in possession of any alcoholic beverage container present at the event.
Okay.
So it gets everybody in there. Because we need to have a prohibition, but we also need to be able to have a ball game.
Right, so we also have a public event policy, which does cover that to some extent, maybe not as thoroughly as you would like, but like if they're putting on a ball game, presumably they're getting a permit to put on an event at a public space because there's liability issues and such like, which the event policy covers. there is something in there about alcohol.
So the facilities agreement,
Yeah,
so.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It's not an event, it's not an
Yes.
event policy, okay.
That does, whether you permit or you don't permit alcohol
At
on the
event.
premises,
Right.
on the premises, right? Now, the bandwagon for next stage, so the liquor control commissioners issue a liquor license for them. So when they have their bandwagon on Cooper's Field, I permit them to have the caterer that provides the alcohol. Okay?
Okay.
Because you've already given them that catering license
Right.
to serve alcohol. So something like that, Fletcher, may work for what you're talking about.
Does that mean they can't bring out,
I
sorry?
think the two line up, because what I'm trying to do in this is to specifically say, this isn't a license to sell alcohol.
Right.
So when
Right.
that keeps it from overlapping your whatever, the alcohol permit that we might put out, keeps the two in separate. Just because we say you can use the ball field and we're not gonna call possession of a container there a violation of this prohibition, that's separate from who's licensed to give you the alcohol. And we're not, the way I put this, it doesn't constitute a license to sell alcohol.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think we need to have a discussion about what people feel about what you're saying, Fletcher, or what people's opinion is about whether, permitting people to just have a beer at a ball game is the direction we want to go. Because I'm not sure that I do or don't, but I think I don't think we can assume that that's a given, that we all want to do that. So I guess that would be, we have to discuss that. Like, does everybody else feel like that are we giving permission, or are we just turning
We're just saying we're not gonna arrest you if you have a beer.
Right.
But it's, the liquor license is separate and within Karen's control. I mean, if the caterer is licensed to sell the alcohol there, that's a separate issue.
That is a separate
And
issue.
whether we're gonna not arrest them, but ticket them for having an open container. If the caterer gives them a beer and they turn around and get nailed for having an open container, that doesn't seem like fair game.
So the events ordinance, it's not an events policy, it's a facilities use policy, also requires a certificate of insurance.
Correct.
So the certificate of insurance automatically comes with alcohol insurance, I don't know what you call it, but it does. Liability, so it does come with that already. So I guess my feeling is that this, and I think I agree with Fletcher, is that this is basically a basic prohibition. You can't open up a beer on the town hall and drink it there.
Right.
But if you're at a public event that has filled out the policy and there's an agreement and there's insurance in place in case things go wrong, then you are allowed to do that.
Right, but are we assuming that when there's ball games that they are fitting that category?
They better be. I mean,
that
that would
they
be
are
like
insured for alcohol consumption.
If they've been.
It would be on their certificate of insurance.
They wouldn't be able to use the field without that.
Okay.
That is correct.
Got it. Okay, I thought there was a category in there of using the ball field for games without having that insurance policy, so.
And this policy is separate. This is the whole town.
Yeah,
It's not just-
yeah,
But I
yeah.
didn't want, in the process of writing an ordinance for the whole town, to mess up whatever might be going on down at the ball field, since that's sort of a new endeavor now
It
for the
is.
town.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's,
Okay.
people are
Yeah.
calling to use it.
which is great.
I have
That's
another
what's for.
charity softball league that
Nice.
wants to use it at the end of September,
That's great.
so.
That's good. Yeah, so,
So it's not that that they're drinking, cracking open a beer at the ballpark. That it has nothing really to do with the ballpark. It has to do with if somebody organized an event at the swimming pool or some other public space, a party, birthday party at the swimming pool, and they went through they would still have to go through that process.
Right.
And they, and then they would be able to serve beer at their picnic, at the picnic tables at the swimming pool if
Right.
they were.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
that's how I read it.
Yeah,
Anyway, I thought, given
So it
that
sounds
I
like-
sprung this on you,
Yeah.
I figured, and then also, we're gonna need advertising of that as well.
Absolutely. So it looks like, just glancing at this briefly, it looks like you changed Article 3. Well, you changed a lot, but,
Yeah, that's a pretty
so the definitions, you kept those, but,
some.
it seems to me like it needs somebody to take this and do rework, not
Well-
in this setting, right?
yeah, so I'm wondering, like, if I take this, can I meld it into this and or vice versa? Like, if I share, because this is Google Doc. We've had that discussion before. Why don't I take this and try to meld it into this, and then I can send it back to you and see if I've done it right. How about that? Okay?
Sure.
All right. Does that sound good to everybody? And then we can bring it back. And I do agree that we should send it to council. I just wanted to get the gist of most of what we were talking about, as a board before we send off some final version. Because council costs money. All right. So is everybody good with that so far? I guess I did it with all of the copies. Does everybody know?
Jeanette has a comment.
Oh, Jeanette.
Oh, you're gonna ask for comments, right?
Oh, yeah, I should, shouldn't I? You should. Is there comments in the room?
I am not sure, I agree with Fletcher, I think it isn't just the ball field, but, so there's a difference between when you talked about, if somebody has an event at the pool, then they can serve beer. There's a difference between serving and bringing. Nobody serves beer at the ball field. People bring a couple beers or a 6-pack and they drink it. Nobody serves it to them. Nobody has. So I assume that if the leagues or the charity, the tournaments are applying for a permit, then that's covered. But so if there's just an informal gathering of people down there kicking the soccer ball around or playing with the horseshoes or anything like that, they would still be subject to being fined whatever, $800 for having a beer.
And I think that's fair because I don't think we want to be liable for any issues that arise from that. So what we're doing is we're putting the liability on the event, on the people who are putting on the event. If you are willing to take on that liability, then have that.
Yeah.
But we don't want to make the town liable for that.
I do understand that. I just am wondering about the event versus just pick up ball games.
That's where I think it has to do with this permit idea, like if somebody has to get a permit from Karen to organize an event, that's where the distinction lies, right? That's the category.
Right. I just
Yeah.
wondered because you're gonna have people hiking and having 3 beers in their backpack when they're hiking and they sit down and have a beer and they're gonna be subject to be fined. But
Subject
I guess
is different than
Then getting caught.
getting caught, what?
Getting caught.
I think
Yeah.
it's that we need to have some protection and some way to respond if there is an issue. It's not as though
Right.
like the select board is gonna be out there
Right,
roaming, looking for people.
Yeah.
Or that we're gonna call the police and.
Right, we're not
I mean, this
policing it.
This is not a revenue draft, you know.
I get that, I got a little bit nervous when you talked about having people with little pads of tickets and going out there and giving.
It was just it was, you know, in the weeds VLCT training.
And not that I'm a big drinker, but I do think that people like to have a beer
At a ball game.
at the ball game or
Oh, God.
or when they're hiking on Bear Hill or
Yeah.
behind the school or swimming in
That's
the
private property actually, so you're fine.
behind the school.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was a town.
No,
I
there's a
don't know.
501c3 called Forest.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if they allow alcohol. So
I don't know that either.
No.
Anyway, just wanted to throw that out and appreciate your willingness to figure out how to allow that to happen, because I can tell you there's a long history with that ball field.
I bet. Yeah.
And watching it on Saturday, it was so amazing to see all those people there. And a lot of people had beer and a lot of people didn't. So it was great.
Needs a playground.
Needs a play.
That's the next thing.
Alright, I'm not sure if you're on playground.
I know, that's exactly what
Let's
I was
move
going.
on.
Oh my God.
Alright, so we'll bring this back up. I will try to meld these two and send it Fletcher's way and eventually we'll get there. Okay, so the next piece is Selectboard Reports, Cannabis Control Board Process and Procedure. Nate?
Nothing for this week.
Okay.
Can I make a comment? Because I
Yeah.
didn't
yeah.
send the email out to the board,
Yes.
so I didn't look into that, but I think that might be important, maybe for your process.
Yeah, we can provide feedback, but what I'm interested in is what everyone else has to say. Like,
Yes.
I want to hear what
Yeah.
other towns are
Right,
experiencing.
yep, good.
Okay. Select Board Operating Principles, Fletcher?
I'll still pass on that one, but the second one, the public participation, I did do some work on that. If you recall, where this stalled before was when I was asked for a red line version, and I still haven't overcome my technical difficulties in producing that. That said, I mean, we're really talking about one page. So
Okay.
what I propose to do right now is to distribute the existing policy and my proposed policy. So that's existing. As I said, it's on your page, and that's proposed. And again, my response to it before and still is that the existing policy seems kind of oppositional between us and the public. And it was as much a matter of tone as anything. But again, because I'm springing it on you at the last minute, I didn't expect a response at this meeting, but I asked you to compare the two and see what you think about it.
Alright, Beverages.
Great, and can we put it and this on the agenda for?
Oh, it's on the agenda. I think it's.
Well, I mean,
Under,
put it on old business for next week.
business.
Next-
so we can-
next month.
Not just a report, but business.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll put that one, we'll move that one up to, old business, I guess, for the next meeting. Karen?
Yes, I already, yeah, I have a note
All right.
about that.
Alright, so thanks for doing that, Fletcher. We'll look at that, everybody look at that and come back with, thoughts. Okay, so that one is there, and again, I don't know why mine is the only one on here, but I haven't touched it, alternate transportation advisory committee. So,
Do you want me to take it off? Or do you want?
no,
The
I
other
want you,
one's
once you
on.
keep the ones on, 'cause everybody has
So we can
one.
all be public, into doing what we said we were gonna do.
It's one of those things that's percolating in my head and hasn't exploded onto paper yet. All right, so, do we need an executive session?
I don't.
Does anybody else feel the need for an executive session? All right. So our next meeting is September 18th, 2024, at 5:30 here at Town Hall and on Zoom. Can I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.